Hello and welcome to Pod Street, the podcast from Writing WA, where we talk writing with the biggest and brightest in WA's literary scene and beyond. I'm Laurie Steed, the Partnerships and Development Manager for Writing WA, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Kylie Howarth. Kylie Howarth is an award-winning, internationally published children's book author-illustrator from Western Australia. She's also part fish. Kylie has swum with whale sharks, manta rays and humpback whales in Ningaloo, piranha and pink dolphins in the Amazon, braved scuba diving with lionfish in Egypt, marine iguanas and hammerhead sharks in the Galapagos Islands, and encountered great white sharks in South Africa. Kylie not only draws inspiration from her underwater travels, but also her own two fish kids who are ocean explorers too. The textures in Kylie's book illustrations are created during their backyard art sessions. Kylie recently won the Western Australian Premier's Book Award Writers Fellowship, the WAYRBA Hoffman Award and KOALA Honour Award. She's been shortlisted for the SCBWI Australian Picture Book Illustrators Award, CBCA Book of the Year Awards, WAYRBA and the YABBA Awards. Kylie, welcome to Pod Street.
Thanks, Laurie. I think we should cut half of that out. There's a lot there to say, isn't there?
There's certainly a lot of initials in there, a lot of capital letters that I'm working my way through, but I think we got there in the end. Now, you started your career as a graphic designer. So how did you go from that to becoming a children's author and illustrator? And what sort of instigated that shift in focus?
It seems to be a bit of a natural progression because so many children's book authors and illustrators also start life as a graphic designer, that or as a teacher. I think it's just all the creative skills, the same sort of set of creative skills. I was working in London for a little while, freelancing over there, and just the freelance lifestyle was incredible. I worked on some amazing brands. And when I came back to Perth, it's a much smaller scene over here, and it would require me to go into an office full time. But I just had babies as well, so that didn't really appeal to me at the time. Yeah. So I thought, what can I do? Well, basically, I started reading them a lot of picture books, and I just fell in love with picture books. And I was like, I have to make one of these.
So then how do you go from that to the actual, were you sure you were going to do both, that you were going to be author and illustrator at the same time, or were you weighing that up as you went along?
Yeah, I was pretty sure I could do both. Graphic designing actually involved a lot of creative thinking and a lot of creative writing. We would often have, I did a lot of wine labels actually, and the wineries would come to us with, this is where our winery is situated, this is a bit of our story, this is a bit about our family, and you'd have to come up with a brand name and a story to fit. So you were writing stories then, and even doing the wine labels, they're like mini little book covers each one. So it wasn't too dissimilar actually, jumping across to making books.
And this is the question from, this is a very literary author question. Were there any doubts at all, or you were like, I've got this, I can do this, I've done this much, I've traveled, I've worked as a graphic designer, I'm now back in Australia, let's do this bit as well?
It was a long time ago. It was 2015 that my first book came out. I can't really remember if there are any doubts. Maybe I wasn't, maybe initially when I started, I probably wasn't aiming for the top and thinking that was possible. So maybe the doubts didn't matter. I think I just wanted to be creative because I'd become a mum. I was just doing mum things, and I just can't survive without a creative outlet. So it was more about sort of feeding that more than, hey, I'm going to become a published book author.
Yeah. Actually, that's a really interesting point too, I guess, as a fellow parent. How one balances those two things. So what age were your kids when you started thinking about going into author illustrating?
Babies.
Wow.
And I was just blessed with a first child who slept for 3 hours during the day. And that's when I just started writing my books. And I just assumed the second one would do the same. It didn't pan out that way. So I had to get a lot more creative with where I found the time to do that. And I found night times worked really well. Everybody was asleep. Nobody needed me anymore. And I would work for a couple of hours, maybe between 10 and midnight. But if I try and do that now, I'm finding I just every night at the moment I fall asleep with my laptop on my lap in bed. Wow. I think maybe I'm shifting to a bit more of a morning brain work time than the night time.
And you found that, I think that's a really important point too with creativity, is that what works at one point might not necessarily work at another point in your life.
Yeah.
Because I know people say, oh, I always write in the morning. And that is just not possible for me right now. Like the boys are in from 5:30 in the morning. So I think we have to adapt, right? And find a new way of making it work.
That might be why night times aren't working, because the kids are up later now.
Yeah.
But at least they're both at school now, so I've got that 9 till 3, and geez, that goes fast, that window.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I can relate to exactly the same thing. So was the book that you published first, the first book that you worked on?
That was Fish Jam.
Yeah.
It was a
Okay.
musical picture book about a musical fish. Yeah.
That's so cool. So you've always been interested in the ocean, like when you were a kid as well, or did that come later once you had your own children?
Yeah, my family spent a lot of time at the beach. My dad was into scuba diving and crayfishing, and we always went out on the little tinny. So yeah, that was part of my childhood. But also, my husband has encouraged me to get a lot braver in the ocean as well, as he's a spear fisherman. So we spend a lot of time boating as a family, and he's built me up from being a little bit scared and having to hold his hand when I'm snorkeling to now, swimming with sharks and scuba diving with them and all sorts of things, and jumping in with whales. So a lot more confident in the ocean, I think, thanks to him.
And are your kids more comfortable in that natural environment so you don't need to pull them away from devices or reading or anything like that? They're raring to go for their next sort of ocean-based adventure?
Yeah, I mean, if they're at home and they're bored, they'll be naturally drawn to those devices. But we find if we get them out, we take them often down to Margaret River or Rottnest, or if we just get them out, then they don't even think about the devices, to be honest.
Yeah, once they're actually out into the natural realm.
Yeah.
So I have a question, having worked through and love working through Kev and Trev with my little one just recently. Do you have a style of illustration? Would you describe your illustration style in a particular way, or does it adapt to the project?
I think the one thing I've tried to keep in my style is using splattered paint textures that I create with my kids in our little backyard art sessions into the illustrations. But the actual shape of characters' faces, that sort of changes for each situation. And most illustrators feel like we quite haven't figured out our style, but that we can look at everybody else's and go, oh no, I can totally pick who illustrated that. Because
Yeah.
it's harder to see your own style, I think.
So you said you do backyard art sessions with your kids.
Yeah, we get anything from broccoli to seaweed to bubble wrap, dip it in paint, splat it on paper, and then I'll scan those textures in and use them in my artworks, because I find if you're illustrating digitally, like, you don't want it to look digital. So the more
Yeah.
painted textures you can create in it, it just adds more interest. It adds another layer of depth to your illustrations. And I love when I go to school visits and the little kids are like, oh, yeah, that was bubble wrap. And they can see how you've sort of created it and see themselves doing it as well.
Oh, that's incredibly cool. I didn't know that about your work. And so your kids, what's their relationship like with your books? Like, do they have their own personal favorites? Do they see themselves in there?
I think they do. And they actually really love what I do and love helping me out. Nothing of mine gets published without having run through them. And so many of the jokes in Kev and Trev come from my kids and family conversations we've had. We love a bit of banter in our family. So naturally that comes through in my books as well. But yeah, they love being involved in the creation process.
And do you have any children's authors that excite or inspire you, or even whether they were formative or more recently that you're just like, wow, these people are doing great work?
As a kid, I, of course, loved Roald Dahl. I love the humour in his
Yeah.
books, particularly the twits. I loved that one as a kid.
Yeah, me too.
But at the moment, I'm inspired by all my WA creative buddies like Christy Byrne and James Foley, Sean Avery, Gavin Ong Tan. There's so many creating so many good works at the moment. And I feel really privileged to be at the stage of my career that I can hang out with these people and chat to them, and we can bounce ideas off each other. It's amazing.
And one of the other things that's cool about the WA children's author scene is that sense of fun. Like, I know that having been sort of part of the adult fiction world for a long time, there's some wonderful friendships within, and we do have the odd laugh, but there's not that gung-ho, here I am dressed up and having a whale of the time with the kids and that kind of thing. So I don't know, to me that's an exciting thing, and I can see even those authors who, like Julia Lawrenson, who might be thinking about stepping away and stuff like that, why you would stay in it for so long, because there's that camaraderie in that sense within the space. So, I guess you mentioned that your children give you some of the jokes within the work. I mean, how important is humour to your work? Is it a case-by-case basis? Like, in some cases, is every one of your book have that humour, or do you have them more sort of pronounced in something like Kevin Trev?
I think most of them do have that humor. I've always really enjoyed watching kids' movies more so than adults' movies, and I love that they're layered. There's jokes in there for the adults to keep them involved, jokes at the kids' level. So I've always sort of treated my books like that, that you've got some little things that are in there just for the parent that you know is having to read this book over and over and again, particularly with a picture book. And, you know, something for the kids as well. I really value humor in my parenting, and value humor in, you know, all my creativity as well. Yeah.
I really love that meta element, particularly in Kevin Trev as well. I just think that the way that kids are growing up, they're increasingly media savvy and aware of how story is constructed too. So to play around with the idea of a story within a story and stuff like that just really unlocks a fun element too. So, it was a real, like I say, it was a real joy to sort of see Jake work his way through and light up at certain parts. And I think that humour side of it is, I guess that probably leads into my next question. Like, in today's mediascape, is there like a magic formula that you know to entice sort of middle grade readers? Like, are there things that need to be in place that sort of get their hearts and minds engaging with the work?
For me, I've got two children who they're dyslexic. They have shorter attention spans, which a lot of kids do have these days. And all the media they watch is, you know, fast moving. So slower books, if you read like a classic from our childhood or watch a movie from our childhood, they really struggle to keep in there because their brains have been trained to be fed a lot faster. So I think stories need to move along at a faster pace than they used to for that age group. And for my boys particularly, having the visual element really helps them as well. And graphic novels actually kind of work like a movie. I actually studied movie script writing and watched all my favourite kids' movies and actually plotted them down in my notebook before I wrote Kevin Trev to try and come up with a book that was just as engaging and exciting to them as watching a movie.
And so given that you sort of have, I guess, that element of illustration, that element of fun within your work, you're also dealing with quite serious topics like children's literacy and different reading types and levels. How do you balance sort of, I guess, the serious concerns that underpin your work with fun? Is there a way to do that and get the message across with humour, or do you think there'll be a point where you'll sort of advocate in a public space in one way and write in another way, or is that something you're already doing?
I think humour can always be used in these situations. Any situation I find is sort of lightened with a bit of humour once you get to the stage in the situation that it's appropriate to be laughing about certain things. So I think you can do it all at once, for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. And obviously the big news of 2024 is you winning the WA Premier's Book Awards Writers Fellowship. I guess talk us through the night. Like, you're going in there, you know there's a shortlist. How does it work from there? It's
I have been, this is the third time I'd applied. Wow. And I'd been shortlisted once before. And so, to be honest, I actually wasn't going to go that night because I knew what it felt like to be shortlisted,
yes,
and not take it away. And as we know, it's very difficult to make a living as a writer, as a creative, yes, and to come so close to that and see it slip away. And I know I'm explaining this to you, and you were there on the night, and you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep, I know that feeling.
I didn't know if I could do that again, so I almost didn't go. I wasn't going to go.
Yeah.
But I did. I found out that because I was actually at Rottnest Island on my Squibby Writers Retreat at the time. But then I found out that Julia Lawrenson was going back for it, and I thought, oh, I should really make the effort to go back. If I've applied for it, I really should be there that night. And I just have to suck it up and be brave if I, get that kick in the guts again.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I think like, that's impressive in itself because I don't know if the winners get notified at all. So I'm guessing they don't. You literally find out when they read it out. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that's the right way to do it?
It is interesting, isn't it? Because I think they want that, excitement on the night. That's what they
Of
said to
course.
me. Because like I got an email and a call saying, oh, we don't tell the people beforehand. We really want them to be excited on the night. And then you're just second questioning. You're like, oh, was that call telling me that I should be there for a reason, or was it
Yes.
not? So
Yeah.
I wasn't really. I was, all over the place in my brain before. Actually, I've never ever had a panic attack in my life, except the day that I was sitting in a Squibby event. I had to time it, get on the ferry to be able to get back, get to my car, drive all the way, have enough time to have a shower, and then get to the awards night. And when I was sitting there thinking through the times of what time I should head off out of this session to get on the ferry, I actually started feeling like I was going to black out, I almost burst into tears as well. And I was like, I don't know what is wrong with me. I didn't recognize any of these feelings. So I actually told the girl next to me, I said, I just have to go out for some fresh air. I feel like I'm about to faint, and that's unusual for me. That doesn't happen for me. So I went out, called my husband, bawled on the phone. I said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I'm crying. Maybe this is sort of some sort of panic attack. I don't know how they feel, but I just need to call you and have you on the phone. I need some fresh air. And just doing that was enough. And then I took off to the ferry and it was all fine. But I don't know. Maybe it was all those worries and feelings coming up again. I'm not sure. So all of that going on.
Yeah, I was myself. I was aware because I think I was shortlisted for the Emerging Prize the first time you were up for the fellowship. So I do remember you being shortlisted for that fellowship. I think it was for the 2018 awards in 2019. So for me, you winning was deeply heartening because there's that nice ending to that story, because I think it can be quite a profound sort of thing to sort of sit in that shortlisting space. So what happens now? You've got your big check, and do you plan to write book number 2 to that deadline of like the 12 months, or is it pretty much done and dusted and it's more just to support you as you get closer to publication?
No, I'll be writing book 2 with the time the fellowship affords. It also allowed me to go to Melbourne and meet my publishing team, which I've never met in like 10 years over there, working with all these people. I hadn't been able to get over there and meet any of these people face to face. And so I went over there for the launch of Kev and Trev Book 1 and signed in bookstores. So I spent 2 days in a car with my publisher, Tash Besliev, and also 1 day in the car with the CEO of Affirm Press, Kieran. And just being able to sit in a car all day long with those kinds of people, my gosh, the amount that I learnt just from having casual car conversations about the publishing industry, that was absolutely, incredible. So little things like that I haven't expected, just being able to afford to go over to Melbourne, meet these people, because normally you couldn't afford to just spend the money on the accommodation and the flights. Just that big learning curve, because you see this side of the publishing thing, you're creating a book, making things for kids, but you don't see the whole business side and what the publisher needs out of your book. I'm always thinking about what the kids need out of it, but what does the publisher need out of it as well?
Yeah. And I mean, one of the interesting things about Kev and Trev, from my perspective, is that it seems to have great visual literacy. So have you thought about things like adaptations or sort of taking them outside of the book realm?
I mean, everybody dreams to have their book made into a movie, don't they? But I don't really know how, how that comes about. I know that DreamWorks do meet with my publisher every now and then to see what they've got in the works. But I think everybody that I've heard of that gets sort of a movie acquisition, it sort of never ends up happening anyway. So
it takes a long time.
I'm just focused on getting the series done, to be honest, because making a graphic novel was a huge commitment, and I did not realize how much work it would take. I totally underestimated how long it would take to create. So my focus is
So
just trying to get the second book made because the first book took 3 years,
three
and I need to
years.
make,
Wow, I was going to ask that. Yeah.
and the next one I've got to make in a year. So
Mm. And how many books in total do you see for Kevin Trip?
I have a contract for two, so
Yeah.
one and two. But as part of my fellowship, I said I will write the pitch for book three, and hopefully I can get a contract for a few more books. But there seems to be this thing happening out there in the world that I'm noticing that, everything's getting cut off at three books. So, which of course is something I spoke to my publisher about as well. And one person had the opinion that three can sometimes be like where a series takes off.
Mm.
And the other had the opinion that no, three's the cutoff and you're better off starting again. So it's it's tricky. I'd love it to continue as long as my neck can hold up for all the drawing. Because I was pushing so much towards the end of Kevin Trev. I spent 3 months towards the end of the deadline illustrating for 13 hours a day and needed a lot of
Wow.
physio after that to actually recover from what I did to my neck.
Yeah. And so financially, is kids writing the children's books like, do you come close to making a living from working
Not
on kids'
without
books?
not without all the author visits.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where we can make a little bit more money. Visiting all the schools, we get paid to do that.
Yeah.
Grants, your ELR, PLR, which is your
Oh,
public
yes, of
lending
course.
rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really help when they roll around each year. So on its own, for me, I only seem to manage to get one book out a year, and that's
Mm.
definitely not enough to make a living.
Yeah.
Um, for the very few, the 1% people manage to make it happen.
Yes, yes.
But from what my publisher was saying the other day, I think it's even more difficult for children's authors than it is for adult
Ah, that's
writers to,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
So
but
it's
I
even
haven't
more of a
looked into
challenge.
those stats. Yeah.
But I do think, I mean, it'd be really interesting to see if we could build sort of stronger networks for other formats for Australian authors in general, because it does seem like we're well off the pace in terms of even getting things greenlit, like you say. Like there's a lot of there are things like adaptable and stuff like that, but in terms of the outputs, it's pretty low. Like I can think of obviously things like Runt and Jasper Jones made by Craig Silvey's work, obviously Invisible Boys from Holden's, but it does seem like an unmined well as such. I know in my work for Writing WA, we're constantly thinking about ways we can get better networks between writers and production, especially with the new film studios being built in Western Australia and Perth. So
Great.
yeah, I guess that's something for us to unpack as we
A lot
go.
of a few children's authors I know have had their picture books turned into plays and
Okay. Yeah,
stage
I've seen a couple of that.
adaptations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of that like. So I mean, I think it's an interesting realm, I guess, because even though there was all that talk about ebooks sort of taking over from print books, it has happened and it hasn't happened in the sense that there's still bookstores doing what they do and doing what they do well. And even last Friday, I was part of this charity event for the Indigenous Literary Foundation, To Whom It May Concern, reading complaint letters, and there was about 100 people there. Like it was a well attended, enjoyable in person event. So I guess there's always that balance. Do you do a mix of in person and online events?
Yes, I'd say most of mine are in person. Most of the time I'm chatting with children, so I think it's nice to be in person with the kids.
Mm.
And sometimes that's through public libraries, and sometimes it's schools booking you directly. Um, I've had a few online events, but definitely way more in person. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I like
excellent.
to do drawing activities with the kids and go around and comment on their, encourage them and comment on everything. So I think it's nice for them to be able to see you in person.
So, what's the best way you've found to get kids to create in your experiences there? I guess the tip is less for the kids, I'm guessing, than for parents who might want to cast off their shackles and create something together with their kids.
I think if you start with just some sort of idea for a starting point. So when I go out and do my author visits and do a drawing activity with the kids, I will start step by step. Often we're drawing a hammerhead shark and I will show them the basic shape and we'll draw it very, very lightly to start with. And then I'll get them to make decisions along the way. So I'll say, okay, so these are going to be the eyes, but I want you to choose the shape of the eyeballs. Maybe he's got tiny little dots. Maybe they're quite big eyeballs with the little white cutout bits that look cute. Maybe their lines are a little bit more like a crocodile or a snake. And every little decision that they make on their own, in the end, every child ends up with a completely different character design than the child next to them. So, but you're giving them that starting point, because often it's just starting. And I think that's the hardest thing to do.
Interesting.
But I think when you do my backyard art sessions with the kids, I think it's more about focusing on the process rather than the outcome. And then that takes the pressure off.
Excellent. Now, we mentioned Kev and Trev. For those not yet in the know, who I can't imagine are many, do you want to give us the potted version of your Snot Funny Sea Stories elevator pitch?
Okay, so there's quite a few layers to this book, but
yeah, there is.
We've got a surfing cockatoo named Kev and a marine iguana who's quite resourceful. She can fix anything. Her name's Trev, using things she's found in an op shop. They're living their best lives. They've got no school, no job, no homework, no probs, except they do have a problem. Their houseboat is falling to bits, and they've tried a few things in the past to try and get some cash, and it didn't work out. So now they've decided that they are going to write a book of funny short sea stories in order to get rich and famous, because both you and I know that that's the best way to get
rich and famous. Yeah. I mean, I have to admit, I was very envious of their ability to find a publisher, because the publisher sounded a lot more fun than a publisher. I was thinking maybe I need a publisher. This is where I've been going wrong.
Yeah, and then all you have to do is go out in the sea and try and find some merpugs to write about, and you're all set.
I love that. I just, I think your imagination is amazing in sort of taking the ocean space and filling it with oceanish creatures that are quite different and unique within the space. So I don't know. I think there's a lesson for any creative person there to sort of, I guess, reimagine is probably the best way to put it. Like, you reimagine the seascape, and it's so much fun. Just a joy to read. It's something I can't imagine. I'm sure a kid could read it and enjoy it on their own, but it almost feels like a book made to share with a parent or someone similar. So, best wishes for book number 2 in the series. I can't wait. Thank you so much for taking time out to talk with me. Congratulations again on the fellowship, and happy writing. You're living the dream. You've got time to write and support to do it. It doesn't happen all that often.
No, I'm definitely very grateful.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Kylie.
Thanks, Laurie.